Hello and welcome to the first in the series of WeAreTechWomen webinars. This is part of our WeAreVirtual Series in partnership with DELL Technologies. So today we're talking about recovering from a cyber attack, and we're very, very proud to welcome Elizabeth Green and Des O'Connor from DELL Technologies, who are going to give us all their insights and expertise. If you enjoyed the session, please do go on to Twitter afterwards or LinkedIn and give us a tweet around some of the things that you picked up. But above all, I wish you a fantastic hour with these amazing experts. Enjoy.
That's great. Thank you, Vanessa, and it's a pleasure to be here. So we're going to take you through what we're going to talk around understanding some of the lessons learned that we have from our experience within the field. So we're going to be taking you through some of the key metrics of organizations and the experience that they've had within a cyber landscape. So by first means by first, we're going to do a formal introduction. So my name is Des O'Connor. I've been in DELL Technologies for 2 years now, and I see myself as the technology optimist, and I'm loving what DELL's mantra is around driving human progress. An interesting fact about me is that I used to be on the Irish television as an extra, but it was pre-YouTube, so there's no footage around that. I'm joined today by my colleague, Liz Green, so I'm just going to hand over for a brief introduction.
Thanks, Des. Hi, everyone. I hope you are excited to be on this webinar today. I know Des and I are. I'm Liz Green. I'm the Cyber Resilience Specialist for DELL Technologies. I have the honor of working on a daily basis with the lovely Des O'Connor. I've been at DELL Technologies for 5 years now. More recently focused on helping our clients to build resilience, which is quite timely, and there's a lot we're going to share with you today that can be applicable to your organizations moving forward. Fun facts about me is that I actually played the trumpet for 6 years. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but yeah, someone sent me that yesterday when I used that on a client meeting. But anyway, yes, I played the trumpet for 6 years. Won't be playing the trumpet today, though. Happy to be here. Thank you, everyone.
So what we really want to do is just start off by setting the scene of what we're going to discuss. We're going to take you through what's actually happening today globally through small, medium, and large organizations. And then Liz and I are going to talk you through about protecting your critical data and how organizations can approach that. Since joining DELL, I've become a bit of a tech geek, and I actually got excited a couple of weeks ago over an architecture map based on a cybersecurity vault. And I was like, oh my God, times have changed. But what we're going to do is talk you through at a very high level. And if there's any questions that people have around this topic, please feel free to interact with us through the Q&A chat function. We're happy to take questions towards the end, but we will monitor them as they come through. And what we really obviously want to highlight is some of the lessons learned that people have experienced within this arena and how they've recovered. And I think what's really, really good is that we can then drive through some of the key messaging that has been taken from people within the organizations that have been hit. But what we're really interested to just quickly do as well is there should be a Q&A just popped up on your screens. If you're able to answer two of the questions that we have here. The first one is, which of the two are you most interested in? One, around our business approach to cyber recovery attack, or two, understanding the technical approaches to a cyber recovery attack. Because Liz and I can kind of go into the detail, or we can keep it at a very high level and talk at a very much a holistic perspective rather than into the technicalities. And the second question that we have there is understanding if you're from a technical background or a business function. I'm just going to give you a moment to answer that, if that's okay.
Des, should we start guessing the answers?
Yeah, you can go first there, Liz.
No. I'm hoping it's a bit of both, but either way it goes, and we can accommodate. So should be good.
Okay, so what we're getting back is a mix between the technical and the business function, but it came in mostly with regards to the business. So what we'll do is we'll keep it at a high level and we'll talk that through. And furthermore, if there's any questions, then again, from a technical perspective, please feel free to ask in the chat function. Right, so let's get into it. So section 1, setting the scene. So we wanted to start off by a quote from the Harvard Business Review. And it really just emphasizes the cost of the cyber attacks to a global pandemic, really, within this area of cyber threats. And it is one of the biggest cyber threats are one of the biggest threats within an organization right now. If we look at it, 20 years ago, the internet was new, fresh, and shiny. And now what it is being deemed as is a scary, dangerous place. There are proactive measures that organizations are now taking to make sure that they recover quickly when a cyber attack happens. And basically what's happening now, just to set the scene, is that cybercrime is becoming the new form of bank robbery. Years ago, they had the bank robbers coming in with their guns and holding people to ransom. But what's happening now is this is happening on the dark web, and organizations are actually literally voiceless when an attack actually occurs. The thing what we really want to emphasize is that it should not stop you engaging in business, obviously. And secondly, there are ways that you can protect and take your critical data off the network. But what's really interesting, according to the Financial Times, is that they're saying that cybercrime is now becoming one of the more profitable businesses than the illegal trade of drugs. So that's really, really crazy around how that shift in parallel has been taking place, that there's more money to be made in cybercrime than there are in drugs. The average cost of a data breach to a large FTSE 100 can be around $4 million. And the idea of what we really want to do today is not to scare you into thinking that you need to change your approach to business, but just understand some of the lessons that have been learned from organizations who have been hit. So some of the prevalent names that we're familiar with, these are the organizations that have had massive, massive cyber attacks. And what we're really demonstrating here is that we cannot get away from the fact that malware and ransomware is becoming more sophisticated than ever before. In America, on average, a hacker attack takes place every 39 seconds. Let's just take a moment, right? 39 seconds on average, an organization is tried to be hit. The companies on the right-hand side, you can see these ones were really, really the brunt of what kicked off a whole new approach to cybersecurity. 77 million users' data was taken from Sony. Widespread system outages were done with Maersk. 110 million customers were affected by the data breach within the Marriott data breach, and 500 million customers with British Airways. Think of the effect that this has had on their brand, and also the downtime that they had to recover in the event of the attack. British Airways were fined £183 million by the financial regulator and the authorities on GDPR based on these security breaches. So not only were they down, not only were they affected by their internal processes and their brand reputation, British Airways also got fined with their fine on top of that as well. Now, the idea is that they've been able to share and collaborate and help organizations learn from their mistakes and also increase their threat vectors and vulnerabilities and responses to what's actually happening within the marketplace. More recently, TravelX was hit with an attack in early January. They were hit by the Revel cyber group through a file encryption protocol that took down their systems for 3.5 weeks. The ransomers demanded $6 million initially through Bitcoin, but they had to negotiate back down to get to a reasonable fee that the organization determined was fair and just. And that came out at $2.3 million. That's what cost them that from their attack. Obviously now, TravelX has been going through more issues further from the pandemic, And on the 16th of March, they actually suspended their business on the London Stock Exchange, and they have identified £81 million of undisclosed finance. And that is the attack vectors have really just increased to a catastrophe within the TravelX business. And hopefully they, will learn from their mistakes if they are recoupable after this lockdown and the pandemic. So I'm just going to hand over to Liz to just quickly take us through what we mean by resilience and take you through some more examples of that.
Thanks, Des. I think because it's really when, not if, all of our clients today are trying to learn as much as they can from those logos that you just saw up there to build resilience. So to quickly define what we mean by resilience is the ability to recover from or adjust easily to adversity or change. Now, our clients, and I'm sure many on the phone, they don't really want to focus on resilience. They have to focus on resilience. They want to focus on the sexy technologies like blockchain, artificial intelligence, big data analytics. Those are things that are going to drive revenue and profits and ultimately growth. But at the same time, there's quite an intense regulatory environment, which says, as you take these risks and you take chances with the technology that you use, you need to make sure that your data is available and that the integrity of that data is upheld no matter what. Those are quite competing ideologies. So the only way to truly achieve both is to build resilience so that you can recover and come back from anything. Now, during COVID-19, we're seeing pretty much everyone, both on this phone line, companies, big and small, facing adversity and change. So it's really important that they understand how they recover and adapt. And I think all of us have been successful with that to certain degrees. But when we look at cyber threat, it's even more important that we look at the new risk landscape. So Des, if you don't mind, moving on to the next slide, it's really important we start building resilience, especially now during COVID-19. Sorry, my slides are a little slow. There's really 4 key reasons why cyber resilience and understanding how to recover and taking lessons learned is important during the COVID-19 landscape. So the first is there are more people working from home than ever before. And when I saw that and I talked about it with peers, I found out it's not just a little bit more, it's a significant amount more. So in the UK, used to be around 1.7 million people worked from home. Now with COVID-19, it's around 20 million. So when you think about businesses and operations, it's not just you and me moving our systems home and bringing our laptops back to our home offices. It's really supply chains are going virtual. Call centers that have, for the last 40 years been brick and mortar are now moving from home. So there's just an influx in people. So that's number one. The second is that poses a huge risk to the perimeter. And the reason for that is when you bring things home, you're using a home network. And how many of you have really cool connected devices at home? I imagine if you're Des, you have an Amazon Alexa. I just got a Roomba, which is ridiculous. It is a little vacuum cleaner that's robotic. All of these things have apps and they connect to the Internet of Things. They also connect to your Wi-Fi. And that's putting a huge strain on your company's virtual private networks to be able to maintain and protect the corporate network, because a lot of those IoT devices are not really secure. So increasing threats in the perimeter is really the second piece. All of this makes it easier to access the network, making it difficult for our companies to be able to push out updates. Typically, businesses would have a corporate update that comes out, let's say, every month. They would do it in the corporate offices. You hand over your laptop for a day, and that's it. And now, no one can do that. So they're having to push out updates and patches to the endpoint, which is quite difficult. And the last is, we're seeing from really all of the, educators in this space that it's really important that you start taking these steps now. The National Cybersecurity Center has recommended proactive steps to cybersecurity, and both proactive and reactive. It's a combination of both of them, and we're going to go through what that means. But during COVID-19, really important. If you move on to the next slide, Des, we'll talk a little bit about some of the headlines. Sorry, my slides are a bit slow. So these are just a sample. this is not meant to scare. There's a lot of cyber crime going on right now. The cyber threat actors have adapted to COVID-19. They've been able to manipulate and use societal fears to prey on employees, individuals, and companies. And we're seeing it in a lot of forms. It could be a phishing email that looks like it's from a C-level or a leader, but really has an attachment with some sort of malware or a zero-day vulnerability or a trick bot that gets downloaded onto your computer. It could be an email that looks like it's from the CDC or the Ministry of Health or the World Health Organization. We're seeing apps that come out that say they're doing one thing and not the other. And so we want everyone to be vigilant, but also to realize that we can't protect against everything. So we just need to build resilience inherently in the business. And there's a few ways to do that. If you don't mind, Des, next slide. We want everyone to be ready to respond and recover. And the only way to do that is to align your people, your process, and your technology, as well as the larger ecosystem to be able to support this. And I think Des is going to take us through some of the key learnings from our clients on how we help build resilience. There is no silver bullet. There is no technology solution, I'm sorry, that's going to solve all your problems. It's really a transformation in the business, but there are small steps that you can take through the learnings that we're going to take you through now.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we just want to emphasize the point that technology for resilience is only one piece of the pie. And it's really, really important through your own organizations that you align your people, your process, your ecosystem, and your technology. And we kind of recommend taking these 5 steps. The first one is around building awareness at the executive level. And really what we've seen is, especially from the writing within the Forbes, is around that 90% of the C-suite members that they interviewed state that their organization is not prepared. 76% of those C-suite interviewees say that there is an attack inevitable within their organization. So it's really, really important that you understand the criticality of the cyber landscape, and secondly, build that executive presence that will help that top-down and bottom-up approach in developing a resilient strategy. So what we mean by that is that understand who to go to, where to go to, the policies and procedures that are in place to effectively recover from a cyber attack. So as part of that, building executive leadership awareness, the risk management teams need to be built and also activated as well. It's really important that leaders across the business determine their risk appetite. So what we really want to emphasize is the cost versus risk element within building a resilient strategy. So organizations may weigh up the cost of investing in a cyber resilience strategy versus the risk that their actual organization is got. So there is a difference between disaster recovery and cyber recovery. Disaster recovery is using your backups that you've already got in a different place, and cyber recovery is having specific content, aka data and applications, off the network in a secure remote location. And then what we mean then by moving in through your risk appetite perspective then is determining what your critical assets are. So Maersk have been really, really good at sharing their lessons learned. There is a Wired magazine article that I can share after this presentation that has the detailed description of what happened within their Maersk environment. One of the main things that actually happened was their organization was attacked, and within 30 seconds, the malware had spread through the organization. Lucky for them, one of their data centers in Ghana had accidentally come off the network in a power outage. They realized this fairly quickly, and they realized that the data within that data center that was kept on the off-network copy, aka the power network down, had the critical materials that could rebuild some of the organization. They specifically flew down a plane to collect that server and storage unit and brought it back up to Copenhagen, and they did detailed forensics on that data to help them replenish the organization. So it's really, really important that you think about it. When an attack happens, everything goes down. You may not even have access to your critical materials like your email, or you may not even have access to any of your internet, like your laptop is null and void. So the IT department need to activate their critical materials and start to cleanse any of the protected data that they have to help them bring it back to the organization. So as part of that, we mentioned earlier on, both Liz and I, around aligning your processes. So in the event of when something actually happens, you need to identify the processes of where you go and who is leading what within each business unit to make sure that these processes are able to recover and drive back any of the material back into the organization. So it's really, really important that you drive that synergy and understand the tools, procedures, what leaders are leading what, and activate any business continuity plans within the organization. And it's really important that you look at these elements before an attack actually happens. So if you have a resilient strategy in place, the organizations that we mentioned earlier on, some of their lessons learned was, okay, if you do have a resilient strategy, make sure that you keep testing that. Don't wait to activate any of your business continuity plans or any of your restore processes when the attack actually happens. You need to do simulated, tested environments that you imagine something will happen, and then you test and retest to make sure that it's really, really slick. It's like being back at school and you've got those fire alarms or whatever, and the evacuation policies and procedures. They happen quite regularly. And I think that's the mindset that we encourage organizations to take, is that you expect the unexpected all the time with these attacks. And that when you have nailed that in place, you will be able to quickly recover when the worst actually happens.
That's really clear, Des. And I think we're going to be obviously showing a video in a second. And it's going to be really laser focused on protecting assets and protecting those crown jewels. So just wanted to, I guess, give a PSA for the techies on the line. We're going to get into it in a minute and really zone in on how our solution is able to help with one piece to this puzzle, and then who we work with on top of that puzzle to bring this to life.
So I'm just going to move into a different PowerPoint now, because we did this with a customer the other day and it just affected the overall Zoom presentation. So I've had to take the embedded video into a separate PowerPoint just to make sure that everything works. So if you just bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to switch into that.
Great. I wish I had something to juggle so you guys could be entertained during this time.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm going to play.
Destructive cyber attacks such as ransomware are on a serious rise. It is now more important than ever for you to protect your most critical information. And due to new types of attacks, one of the most enticing targets for an attacker after your production environment is your backup and recovery systems infrastructure. Let's face it, you can't run backups all the time. So how do you protect your most precious data? Well, one of the best ways is an air-gapped recovery vault. You see, the vault is only attached to the network as it's transferring data. Then it's disconnected, making it virtually invisible to attackers. Now that sounds great, but where do you start? DELL Technologies' cyber recovery solution, along with DELL Technologies Services, helps you integrate and protect your most valuable data. We will assess your system. We will advise you on what should be stored in your vaults, and we can even design your recovery processes. Then we help you implement an air-gap vault into your workflow. Cyber recovery works best in addition to your existing disaster recovery and backup system, giving you a more complete protection profile. So when an intrusion does take place, cyber recovery makes sure your critical data is protected and ready to recover. Get started today by visiting delltechnologies.com/gb/cybersecurity.
That music always pumps me up.
Does. Des is going to be going back into the regular presentation Just so you're aware, we were nominated, but we did not receive any Oscars for it. But I know for some with audio and things like that, it might have been difficult to capture. But really, we're talking about isolating crown jewels. What do we mean by crown jewels? We mean kind of the essentials to the business. We're going to lock those away in a vault and keep them protected. Now, Des and I were, and I think he's about to share his screen. When Des and I were starting to talk about, how we work with clients and what our clients typically protect, there's a lot that goes on with the business to really understand what's critical to them. And so that's really where we start working with a larger ecosystem, specifically advisory partners, because the people and process is just as important, if not more important than the technology. You can have a solution that protects crown jewels, but not have the right people or process to be able to know how to get the jewels out and to get them back in and recover them. So I think I'm gonna actually try sharing. Let's see if we can see this. Hope everyone can appreciate some technical difficulties. It wouldn't be the COVID-19 crisis without it. Guys, I'm gonna try if that's okay.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just tried to reshare it there, but it's not working, right?
No, I think you have to stop sharing.
Okay.
Cool, I'll try. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Full screen?
It's not, yes, it's on full screen now.
Perfect, great. We're back in it. So you just saw the video, what to protect. Again, to be able to protect crown jewels, it's people, process, technology, and the larger ecosystem that need to come together. When Des and I were talking about explaining a data vault and crown jewels, we were thinking about analogies. And naturally what came to mind was traveling. So we both would love to go on holiday, but obviously can't. And when going on holiday, you have your backpack and you have your checked bag. In your backpack, you're going to have your passport, you're going to have your credit card details, you're going to have maybe some prescriptions that you might need. If your Des, his fancy sunglasses, those are the essentials, right? But at the same time, you have your checked bag that has everything else in it. And that's the conversation that we have with our clients every day is, what's essential to your business? What is the minimal viable company? What is the credit card and the passport of your business in any industry? And that's a really challenging thing for our clients to get a hold of. But it's also incredibly valuable because in the time like this, they're all thinking about what's the minimal viable company and how do we respond and recover and be agile. Just want to confirm, Des, you can see the full screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. So when we get started and working with clients, we have a few strategic considerations that we've learned. The first is understanding what's critical. Sounds like an easy process, and it's really not. So we need to be able to start small and grow. There are critical materials every business needs to run IT. Those are who's in my organization, who has access to what. When we talk about the MER CEO, and we bring him up because he really is a figurehead in this space to help people learn from their mistakes. After their attack, they were using WhatsApp. They weren't able to open their laptops and connect. And this is a global organization, 76 ports across the entire globe. I think it was thousands of ships left at sea. So understanding that if they had access to that one piece of information, they would at least be able to connect with each other, that's hugely valuable. Understanding the total size from a data perspective, then understanding how quickly you need to be able to recover and what the goals are for the business. In a catastrophic incident, it could take days, weeks. We saw with TravelX, it took months. So understanding what your goal is and who's going to do what during the situation is really important. And last but not least, it needs to align to the strategy of the business. So you currently have a strategy in place for business continuity. It probably just doesn't take into effect some of these more catastrophic incidents. So it doesn't need to be reinventing the wheel here, but aligning these to your current process and procedures, and then making the most of them. Anything you would add here, Des?
No, I think that's the really, really important, right? It's understanding where your data actually sits as part of your business continuity plan. And I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but your business continuity plan is really, really strategic and also very easily accessible. And once you determine all of that, it really helps to drive the synergies within the organization. Some of our clients that we work with have grown fairly quickly through acquisitions and mergers. And so the landscape within their own IT environment can be very, very diverse, running on many, many different systems. And being able to use and undertake this exercise can be seen as a very arduous task, process orientated event and strategy. But being able to do that in the calm of the storm before something actually happens, it does feel quite difficult, but imagine doing it in a time when you can't even turn your laptop on. So understanding where the data sits, how much data that needs to be protected, and how long can you afford to be down is really, really important to creating a holistic approach to driving a consistent and operational business when the worst actually happens.
Great. Well, I think we're going to get into the fun part now. This is probably why you all joined, which is what are the lessons learned from us, from the industry? So, Des, I'll let you take it.
Great, thanks, Liz. Just so you know your screen, I think you're on a dual screen. It's you need to be presenting the full screen. It's kind of in presenter mode.
Oh, okay.
So where we are, the crux of it now, it's to understand and determine what the 5 lessons learned are, right? We really wanted to synergize and break these down for you, because that can really help us in determining what is most critical within an organization. So Liz, you're going to take us through the first one.
Yep. All right, so slow businesses don't survive. It's a fact. We need organizations to respond within 24 hours to a catastrophic cyber attack, or any cyber attack. And it's really difficult for clients to do that because oftentimes they haven't thought about it yet. So our step 1 is start thinking about it now. What's your communication plan? Not only to regulators and your clients, but your employees. Probably the most important is your employees. And that's something that MERS did really well, was they communicated to everyone and anyone. And so making sure you respond quickly is really important. Having the people, process, technology, and the ecosystem aligned, and knowing who, what, and how needs to be considered ahead of time. Over to you.
The second one now is around strong leadership wins, right? So what we've seen most recently in our own experience during this pandemic is our Prime Minister having a health issue and obviously not being able to work, right? So they had a very rigorous and quick response to taking an event that was quite detrimental to the country's success and activated those policies, plans, and procedures in place. And obviously, if you think of all the chaos that's going on, right, you take comfort in some of the government and how they actually manage that kind of ambiguity through a very turbulent time. If we relate that back to cyber security, we need to make sure that strong leaders are in a position to step up and activate any of those business continuity plans, any of the processes, and understand who to go to, where to go to, and how to get the information quickly so that the organization remains calm during a time that can be very chaotic for the IT department. I think another point to really emphasize here is that before, you saw that the IT department worked very much in silo. They were kind of told what to do, and then they had to go and activate and purchase and make sure that the organization had the right backups and policies and procedures in place. Cybersecurity is very different because it doesn't just affect the IT department, it affects the whole organization in its entirety. So it really, really is important to do out your RACI model, your roles, accountability, you're consulted and you're informed of who needs to go where when that actually happens. So who's in charge of what function and who's leading what in what capacity.
Absolutely. Des. And I think with that, it's learning as well about what's happened. So we've talked a lot about MRSA. There were 3 things that they did with the attack that they recommended other organizations do as well. The first was the leaders got involved quickly. They were on calls, they were making decisions. Obviously, it's important to know who's going to call the shots, but having strong leadership is essential. So learning from insights like this. The second thing MRSA did was they communicated well and effectively to all employees. And the third was they gave a lot of onus on the local sites to be able to make decisions that were right for their clients and suppliers. So that was their strategy. Sony Pictures said, one thing that they've learned and an insight for everyone else is know who to call. They had a close relationship with the FBI and they were able to bring them in, but know who you should be calling and start getting answers to that ahead of time. What's really interesting about every attack, if you read about it, one thing they say is we would have liked to be able to isolate parts of the network and recover faster. And that's really the solution that Des and I work with clients to build, is the technical solution allowing companies to respond and recover with data that's isolated off the network. So take from these insights, both business insights and technical insights, start applying those to the business today, because a lot of those will come to benefit you down the line.
So we mentioned it before, but we really wanted to re-emphasize the importance of the risk appetite within an organization. Organizations need to determine whether they want to actually pay the ransom or invest in technology, or will they try and recover themselves, and do they have time to recover while the business is actually down? Think about what we mentioned earlier on as well around the brand reputation and the chaos that can be instilled within your employee base alone. So it's really, really appropriate to consider your level of risk tolerance and your risk appetite within an organization. Because investing in technology, investing in your people and processes capabilities right now may seem like an awful big outlay for an organization. But if you look at it from a perspective of the cost of an actual cyber threat, that's really where the conversation can really differentiate yourselves and also entertain and enhance your competitive opportunity as well, right? So if you think about if you're in a leading edge organization and your organization gets taken down, that's when your competition could really take a lot of the market share. So it's really important to consider all of the internal, external, and possible threat factors that could impact your risk appetite when considering a cyber resilience strategy. So the 5th lesson is on one of the organizations that I love, which is Netflix. So Liz, if you could just flick to the next slide. The 5th lesson that we really want to get you guys to take away is about staying vigilant. It's not just to the organization, the leadership, to protect the organization. Each one of us have a reputation and an understanding and a capability to protect the organization as well. So Liz mentioned earlier on around the phishing attacks and the emails. We need to be more vigilant about how the network is being exposed to protect what actually can happen within that space as well. Netflix is an amazing organization, as we all know. And I think one of the really key amazing things that Netflix has done is maintained their service during a huge surge and uptake in registrations and new profiles. So in the last 3 months, Netflix have onboarded 15.8 million new users onto the platform. Think of all of that demand and surge in demand that the Netflix organization has experienced. No one would have ever predicted that that actually happened. But as a user and the customer experience that we've all received, one thing that they've asked is that they're going to downgrade the quality of the picture to maintain that service. And Netflix is now seen as a critical piece of service for us during the pandemic. So we want to really emphasize how Netflix are market leader, obviously, and then we've got Disney Plus coming in as well. But they use an ethos and methodology called chaos engineering. So they'll automatically take down the network and pretend and simulate that they have a cyber attack to make sure that they are trying to be one step ahead of these attack users as well. So that vigilance is really important than ever before.
Des, just to add to that, I think for the non-techies on the phone, there's a lot you can do with your teams on wargaming and tabletop exercises. We've done these with clients. We've also done these in larger groups, and there's a lot of other businesses and organizations that can support you. You can even find them online. But the idea is, in the event of a cyber attack, what would your team do? How would you communicate? Do you even have a WhatsApp group with your team? Those are things you can start to think about now and develop plans, because the more plans, the better. And the more that you've thought about it, the more richness will come. I think another thing is leaning on your ecosystem. We're seeing competitors come together for the first time ever during some of these cyber resilient catastrophe moments. So the banking industry in New York City has come together with a group called Sheltered Harbor, which is designed to protect consumers in the event of a catastrophic cyber attack. And part of it requires using other people's infrastructure to get data back. We're seeing that kind of collaboration happen in other industries, healthcare, oil and gas. And it's really cool to see, how we can collectively, work as one to solve some of these more catastrophic events and issues for both our employees, our companies, and the global economy. So thinking about, how you stay vigilant is really important.
So I think we're at the end now of the session. So it'd be great if there's some questions coming in. We are basically just wanting to finalize by saying that, re-emphasizing the point around these 5 key areas that can really help build your true resilience strategy. And we've been really keen to work with the organizations that have been affected. And these are the kind of top 5 ways in making sure that a resilience strategy can actually maintain, business coherence and business operations. The purpose of today was just to share some of the industry best practice, but also to state how important it is to consider a holistic approach. We hope we haven't scared you into thinking that, your organization is doomed. There are ways around this, and both Liz and I, as we mentioned, are technology optimists. It can really change how your organization can do business, but it's not just around technology. There's the people, the process, and the ecosystem that also needs consideration. And once those 5 kind of factors are taken into place, your organization should be able to withstand the pressures from these ransomware attacks. So on the next slide, Liz and I have just put together the presentation from today, and we have our call out details as well. But if you open up your camera and point towards the QR code, that will take you to a drive where today's presentation is, the video, and also we've included the Maersk case study as well from what their experience was as well.
Great. We're getting some really good questions in the chat, so it'd be great to start spending some time going through them, Des.
Yeah. So Liz, I think the first question
is, what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say this would be very relevant for you, Liz, to answer, because when Liz was living in the US, she lived in Boston, but was very much selling this solution into small and medium enterprises.
Yeah, so I think small companies have a different threat than enterprise companies do. For small businesses, this could mean business extinction. We're working with a small mom and pop hospital shop. Sorry, mom and pop in the US is small. Small doctor's office in New York City was hit with a ransomware attack, and they chose to just retire early instead of paying the ransom. And that's unfortunately a reality for small businesses, is not being able to get out of this and having to, kind of absolve the company. So for a small organization, it's still vital to think about how you isolate data off the network in a smaller way. And we can have subsequent discussions on how you do that. I think other things for a small company to think about is, are you able to push updates and patches to your business in a streamlined way? What's your cloud strategy, and how's your cloud data being protected? And also, it's really the same from a small, medium, and a large business. What's the essential value of your business? What would be a minimal viable version of your company? And how can you start thinking about the critical assets that you would need and protecting? Des, I think you're on mute, but I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's really important. And what we really want to emphasize here as well is that, we're not here to sell technology. It's very agnostic. I think it's really, we've got another question there around the risk appetite, and understandably investing significantly in technology controls, you can still be breached. So basically what the key ethos is that, how do you handle the investment with a risk tolerance conversation? I think it's really important that, you just know where policies, procedures, and technology actually sits within the organization. So I think basically the cost versus technology can be neutral if you manage it in a consolidated and consistent way. So having technology that is safe and secure and even backed up quite regularly can help you, right? But what is really important is to consider the overall approach to how you manage risk within the organization. Liz, do you have anything to add around the risk appetite and how do we handle kind of the cost versus risk tolerance?
Yeah, I think what I would say is we're assuming a catastrophic incident will happen, and we want to make sure that you can recover, which is fundamentally different than the way we used to look at cybersecurity, which was let's keep all the bad actors out and find them when they're in before they do anything bad to our business. We're going to assume that those activities will happen, unfortunately. Someone will be in the network, someone will be able to encrypt your data. What's your plan B? And I think everyone needs to have a plan B. No one, as we saw with the names on that list, no one is really able to skirt by anymore. And, the standard ways we looked at cybersecurity in the preventative ways are not really robust enough. So I think from a risk perspective, it would be allocating costs to your plan B, allocating costs to how you recover, because it's no longer sufficient to just have, a detection mechanism or, some sort of preventative measures. You also need to be able to recover.
I think
so. The third
and I think,
question,
Liz,
yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to just, Liz, the NIST framework as well, right? So NIST really looked at kind of protecting and recovering content, whereas cyber is really important around the response and recovery of data. So that's where we kind of look at the differentiators between the current state of play within the backup arena versus the cyber arena, which is respond and recover. Because what we are assuming is that it's not if your organization is going to get attacked, it's when you're going to get attacked.
Yep. And on that, Des, we see a lot of investments move with the NIST framework. So that framework is something all of your organizations probably use as a benchmark. Identifying, detecting, protecting, responding, and recovering. Those 5 pillars. We see most people invest from left to right. They first want to identify risk, then detect it, then protect their data. And not a lot of money ends up allocated to respond and recover. So I think it would be looking at that strategy, understanding where the money's going, and just making sure you have something allocated to your respond and recover capabilities.
So we've got another question around what do you recommend to do of changing a career from projects into cyber. So there is a lot of virtual training online out there around that, but also what we've been really encouraged to do is look at some of the advisory companies as well and some of their methodologies and frameworks that are in place. So that information from KPMG, EY, Deloitte, PwC and Accenture is readily available. And they really do break it down into certain frameworks around how you can change these particular projects from current day to day to a cyber, and making sure that you are compliant and more regularly as well around the compliance. Liz touched on it there as well around Sheltered Harbor. That's a US initiative, but it is a fundamental initiative in the US around how organizations can be more attainable and compliant in the financial regulation environment within the US. So I would definitely recommend looking at the top 4 advisory firms on their framework and recommendations, as well as the cyber compliance within the US on sheltered harbor. There are a lot of courses available online as well. And I think the other one that's really important is to look at the NIST framework, as Liz has just mentioned there as well.
The only other thing I would add is definitely do it. We need more people in cyber. There's not enough. And I think it's really easy to be overwhelmed and think it's this new language, but when you get into it, it's really straightforward. So I would try and find a mentor within your organization that focuses on it and maybe do it as a side project. But it's absolutely an area you should get into now. If anything, hopefully this presentation showed you that cybersecurity and cyber resilience is going to be even more of a focus for the business of the future. So we're going to need more leaders in that space. Definitely think about it.
So I've seen a couple of you have logged into the presentation that's on the point drive as well, which is great. So we're here to help. You know, if anyone does want to get understanding more around, you know, moving in. I mean, from my own personal experience, I came from a consultancy background and I moved into the technology arena. I used to focus on digital strategy, and now it's amazing technology. I'm now focused on the cyber kind of landscape. And that's been really, really interesting, that change from day-to-day project management or whatever from a digital perspective into a cyber landscape has been really, really interesting. So we're here to help. Our numbers are on screen. We've got our Twitter as well, and we're available on LinkedIn to continue the chat. Liz and I have been posting some videos more recently as well on some of the topics that we discussed today and the importance of protecting those questions as well and capabilities within the cyber arena. We've just got another question in here. So with the rise of IoT devices and working from home, what can be done to prevent more attacks? Surely this is increasing the number of potential threats, even with the level of investment going into cybersecurity, new technologies, adding oil to the fire. Yeah, I think what's really interesting actually with that, and I will hand over to Liz in a second, but what's really interesting around the rise of IoT devices, we're becoming our own IT managers at home. One of my favorite, obviously my Alexa behind me is one of my favorite tools, but also the IoT and Nest device, etc., etc. So the houses are becoming more smart, and that is a risk because we're sharing data more and more now. So what is really, really important is that, you know, you enable your children within the household to understand the risks that are exposed with using these IoT devices as well, and making sure that you have your own network, so your laptops are backed up and also secure from malware. So having McAfee or whatever, any pieces of software that will protect those elements as well, and basically just maintaining and understanding the risks that you actually are having. So these can be in the forms of different text messages saying that something has been alerted. So just being vigilant is really, really important as well, and understanding the capability that these IoT devices can have on your home as well.
Yeah, I would say unfortunately it's starting to read the fine print of some of the things that you sign up for. You know, the errors that come up on your iPhone when you haven't updated. You know, it's not really just for that app to have a new feature. It's usually often security bug related. So being vigilant, absolutely. Credential updates. So I know they're annoying. You get them from your company. You need to change your password. You really do need to do that. You can also update your router and your Wi-Fi on a constant basis, which I know is hard and seems challenging, but it's important. Always use a VPN, a virtual private network, when you can. So I think those are a couple things. The other thing is that you won't be able to. As we move to IoT, the threat landscape and the risk will be higher. And that's really why having the technology that allows your business to respond and recover, specifically recover good data, is going to be even more important. So I think, you know, it's a great point. You know, it's really going to be more challenging to be able to truly prevent things from happening. And so we need to just accept that it will happen and be able to recover. Any other questions? Don't be shy.
No open questions.
Okay. Well, connect with us on LinkedIn. Ask us other questions. We actually planned the technical outage on Zoom, so hopefully you enjoyed that. We live, eat, and breathe this every day. So, we're happy to share other insights answer questions you may have.
And thank you to We Are the City for enabling us to present to you today. I think, Liz and I are pretty passionate about this, and, there is technology which is fundamental to everyday life, but, having the capability to draw on these experience from other organizations is really, really good. So thank you again to everyone who's participated today and listening to us. And we look forward to continuing the conversation, and let's get social.
Let's get social. Thank you.